Good morning, everyone. Today we are in Jeremiah chapter 44. And this chapter is going to follow on the heels of the last couple of chapters when it comes to the message of God relating to the people going down to Egypt. If you recall, in previous chapters, God had told the people of Judah that were remaining not to go down to Egypt, and they did it anyway. He warned them about going to Egypt, and they called Jeremiah a liar. And so now they are down in Egypt. And in chapter 44, you have this next message that God is going to send to the people of Judah in Egypt. And in this message, he's going to talk to them about the fact that they have continued the practices that brought about the demise of Jerusalem to begin with, in that they are continuing to offer incense to idolatrous gods. They are continuing to refuse to listen to the things that he has to say, and they are going to bring about their own demise here in Egypt. This is not going to be a safe place for them, even though they have run to it as a place of safety. So let's look at a couple of things that God points out through Jeremiah here in Jeremiah chapter 44. First of all, beginning in verse 4, God says, "However, I have sent to you all my servants, the prophets, rising early and sending them, saying, Oh, do not do this abominable thing I hate. But you haven't listened." God says, I have sent to you many prophets. And certainly, as you go through and look at the history of Israel and the history of Judah, God did send them many prophets, and even Jeremiah is not the only prophet of his day who has been warning and has been prophesying about these things. As a matter of fact, by the time Jeremiah is speaking here, you have Daniel that is working in Babylon, and you have Ezekiel that is working with the people that have already been carried away in the second carrying away. And so Jeremiah, even now, is not the only prophet of God who is working. And yet, every time they come to the people and say, Do not do this thing that I hate, the people refuse to listen and they refuse to obey. And sometimes it's frustrating to look at the way people live their lives today and see the exact same thing playing out. That it doesn't matter what God has said, it doesn't matter what God has told people when it comes to do not do this, that they insist upon doing it anyway, and that they don't want to listen to what God has to say. And yet that is not going to go unanswered. And it's not going to go unanswered in the days of the people of Judah either. God says, I have sent you messengers. It's not a matter of ignorance, but rather it is a matter of rebellion. That it's not that you don't know what I want you to do, it's that you don't care. You drop down to verse 15 and 16, and you really see this particular attitude come to life. When all of the men, after they've heard what Jeremiah says, all of the men who knew that their wives had burned incense to other gods, with all the women who stood by, a great multitude, and all the people who dwelt in the land of Egypt in Pathros, answered Jeremiah, saying, As for the word that you have spoken to us in the name of the Lord, we will not listen to you. They're not going to pretend to listen. They're not going to say, Thank you for speaking to us. We will get back to you if we have a decision. They're not even going to get angry about it. As a matter of fact, they just don't care. They say, We will not listen to you. And it's an amazing thing because they have just seen and they have just lived through everything that has happened with God's judgment on Judah, with the destruction of the Jerusalem, with the taking of their king into Babylon. With all of these various things that have happened, they have seen God's displeasure and they have seen God's willingness to go to great lengths to bring them back to Him. And yet they still say, We will not listen. This is one of the truest examples of a people with a hardened heart. That it doesn't matter what God says and it doesn't matter what God does, they will not be willing to listen. They will not be willing to change their lives, to change their ways, no matter who it is that's presenting it and no matter what it is that they've seen. So many times people talk about if I could just see a miracle, or if I could just see this, or if I could just see that. They've seen all of those things, and yet it still doesn't sway anything with them. The third thing I want us to see is down in verse number 19, where the women speak, because one of the things that Jeremiah points out in his messages is the incense that the women offer toward these idolatrous gods. And I want you to notice what they say to Jeremiah. They say, "And when we have burned incense to the Queen of Heaven and poured out drink offerings to her, did we make cakes for her to worship her and pour out drink offerings to her without our husband's permission?" There's a very interesting point that's being made here by these women, in that they are singled out for the actions that they have done in the course of the discussion of Jeremiah. But they come back and they say, "Do you really think that we could do these things without our husbands knowing and without our husbands being okay with it?" There is a recognition here, and there is an insistence here on the fact that they are all doing this together. That it's not a matter of one forcing the other to do it, or one hiding from the other the fact that they're doing it, but rather it is with all of the different things that they're doing and all of the different ways that they're giving these offerings and making these atonements and all of these things to these idolatrous gods. They're working together. It is open in their relationships that these are the things that they do and that these are the gods that they worship. They're not even pretending. They're not even trying to hide it. This is something that they are fully invested in. And so it's not a matter of even being able or being willing to say, I didn't know that this was going on, or I didn't know that they believed this way, or this is a complete surprise to me. No, they're proud of it. And they're willing to stand by it. And it's going to bring about not just their destruction, but as is going to be stated at the end of the chapter, God says, "I will give Pharaoh Hophra, the king of Egypt, into the hand of his enemies, and into the hand of those who seek his life, just like I did Zedekiah." And most of the people are going to perish in Egypt. Most of the people of Judah are going to perish in Egypt. In chapter 44, you see a great deal of judgment, but you also see a great deal of rebellion. And you see just how hard-hearted the people of Judah have become when it comes to their relationship with God. Next time we will come back, Lord willing, and we will begin looking at chapter 45. But until then, I hope you have a good day.